Okay. So thank you guys, first of all, for coming. This is an awesome turnout, and we have a good mix of people here. I think this is going to be really, really cool. My name is Alec Garcia. I'm terrible at talking about myself, so I'll try to get through this bio stuff quickly, and then we'll go around and meet everybody else. But my name is Alec Garcia. I've been writing professionally for about 10 years. A lot of it's been marketing stuff, copywriting, TV, radio, that kind of thing. But as I was studying and learning writing, I kept bumping into screenwriting, and eventually I was just like, heck, let's do this thing, and I ended up getting an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing for entertainment. So I wrote for screenwriting, video games, a ton of stuff across my program, but what I ended up being good at and focusing on was screenwriting. So read a ton of books, all that kind of thing, and then after I graduated, my brother called me up and he was like, hey, I need scripts for a bunch of horror movies. Can you write me 4 horror movies by next week? And I was like, in my head, I was like, no, that's insane, 4 horror movies. But then my mouth said, yes, okay, let's do this. And so I came up with 4 horror scripts. 3 of them got produced. 1 of them went on to win or be a finalist at the Shiver International Film Festival in Ontario, which was pretty cool. And then after that, some time passed, and then he teamed up with Roxanne Fortner, some of you might know her from around here. She wanted to do a feature, and she wanted to act in a feature, and so they approached me to write it. I wrote it, and that was Aurora's Law, which was shot here. Some of you might be familiar with that. Was shot here last year. So since then, we're in post-production right now. We're really close. I'm so anxious about that, coming out of post-production, which will be really cool. But since then, I've just been writing like crazy. I've cranked out 3 other features, a handful of other shorts in that time. So I've just been really honing my craft. And so when Brent approached me to teach this class, of course, I'm excited. And I see other people who have made films here, and thank you guys for being here, because it's just such a cool art form. It's such a collaborative art form. And so I'm excited that you guys are here to go on the screenwriting journey with me, because it's an amazing art form. So what I'd like to do, any questions about that? About my qualifications to teach this class? Speak now or forever hold your peace, because this is it. Okay, so I'd like to go around the room and just kind of get to know you guys and kind of know, we can start over here, if that's all right with you, sir. So you see the 2 questions there on your schedule, just your name and kind of what you want out of this class, maybe what's your background in writing, what have you done so far, that kind of thing.
Rick Edwards, I wanted to actually kind of get something to, I have actually written a movie.
Okay, great.
And I did it it just sort of came to me out of thin air.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's amazing how that happens.
And I actually have a producer in LA looking at it.
Great.
So
fantastic.
We're looking at that, but I didn't know anything about it when I did it. I just sat down and wrote it.
Yeah. Did you get Final Draft or something like that, or did you just Microsoft Word?
No, I just wrote it by hand.
Wow.
So
okay.
I just sat down and wrote it. And,
interesting. Good for you.
And so when Brent was talking about taking the class,
So some of this, if you've gone through the process, some of it's going to seem a little bit basic to some of you folks, but there are also, I've read a lot of scripts now that people send me oh, I want you to read my stuff, and there's some fundamental stuff that I think a lot of people miss, so hopefully you get something out. There's going to be some, okay, great, well, welcome. We'll just go kind of zigzag, if you want
to. My name is Sarah Kynard, and to get out of this class, just my foot in the door, see if this is for me, because I do like writing, but I don't know if I'm gonna like this type of writing.
Okay. So you've done short stories and cool.
I'm Chantal Keenitz. I'm going to college for screenwriting.
Nice.
So yeah,
where at?
Trying to lay groundwork.
Okay. Where are you going?
GCU right now.
Oh, okay.
I haven't fully decided that.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, welcome, and let's just go back here.
My name's Cody Batch. We've done several short independent films, and right now I think we're just in the process of making short little, I don't know how to explain it, little super short comedy videos about our culture and stuff, just to kind of make I'm really working on my cinematography.
You had one about the grandpa and the dad and the kid talking on the cliffside or something.
Yeah,
I think I've seen it on YouTube.
Yeah, so cool. My dad. So we just like to, it kind of helps everybody to laugh about it, but we're actually trying to work on our cinematography and storytelling through our film. But as far as screenwriting, I've written a couple of scripts and stuff, but I haven't really actually sat down and actually got to learn about it. So I was super stoked. Brent told me about this when I saw him post about it. I was like, oh, I got to go to this
Yeah.
So there's just me and my siblings. We try to make little films.
Fantastic. Great. Welcome.
My name's Colin Bates. I'm Cody's younger brother. I have no experience in screenwriting. I'm more of an actor, so
Okay.
Anything and everything I can get out of this class, basically.
Yeah, I think it's helpful actually vice versa. I took a couple acting classes, like, okay, this isn't for me, but I'm glad I did it, so I can kind of think, like, as I write, kind of so welcome.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bautista. I'm studying to be an animator, but I also enjoy writing stories.
Yeah.
So I think I'd go and try screenwriting.
Nice. Awesome. Welcome.
I'm Joshua, and what I want to get out of this class is I like writing, but I want to learn like a certain format to keep it organized and to make it make sense.
Right, structure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, awesome. We'll cover that today. Welcome.
I'm Luke. I am from here originally. Not a whole life story. Went to film school. I've worked in the industry on a lot of different projects, from feature films to TV shows, things like that. I have the past about 3 years, I've just been doing stuff independently. Taken a few screenwriting classes, but it's never been my forte. So the more I can learn,
A little bit. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's go back here.
Hi, I'm Maurice Johnson. I've taken a few screenwriting classes, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to teach today, because it's cool to just like see if you missed something, and to see what other people have to offer. And I enjoy writing scripts. I'm an amateur scriptwriter, I guess, but it's just a fun process.
It is,
to write a story and dialogue.
Cool. I love that mindset. I mean, like, even putting the notes together for this class, I was like, oh yeah. I remembered a moment in my script. I was like, I messed that up. I need to go to. So there's always you always have to just be refreshed and reminded. So that's great.
Hello, my name is Melvin Redhouse. I think I'm the only high schooler.
Welcome though. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know that's what you want to do. Start early, man.
Yeah, and in my sophomore year, I just knew that writing, I just kind of loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I used to go to Kirtland, but now I go to Farmington High School. And I guess my teacher, who is now my mentor, I guess you could say, she kind of got me into it. She kind of helped me know more of the basics of screenwriting, acting, filming, and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just like fell in love with it, and then I was like, this is what I want to do.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. Welcome. Let's go back up here. Just your name, what you want to get out of the class, maybe a little bit about writing background.
My name's Craig. Inspired to be an actor, doing voice acting, taking classes in community college, also doing voice acting online right now.
Yeah.
Just want to see what I can get. I haven't done any screenwriting or anything like that.
Okay. Cool. You're in the right place. So if you take a glance at that schedule real quick, you'll kind of get the gist of what we're going to do. We're going to do screenplay basics real quick. I say real quick, that'll kind of depend on you guys, like how many questions you have, if there's something you want to go a little bit deeper on, but we're going to go what are the building blocks of a script, what those things mean or what they don't mean. We're going to start there. And then we'll take a break sort of around 10 o'clock, and then we're going to go into story basics, which is much more like structure, characters, what are the ingredients that go into a story that work in a screenplay and on film. And then I've got a list of resources, recommendations, books, websites, those kinds of things to give you at the end.
Hey, Alec.
Yeah.
Where do we get the package?
You didn't get one? Hold on one sec. So I'm curious, these little survey questions we have here. How many of you have seen a screenplay? I know some of you mentioned it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. How many have read one, like a feature film that you didn't write? Read one start to finish. 2 of you. Okay, cool. What was the last one here? And then we kind of got who had actually done some screenwriting there. So that's one of the things I'm going to really harp on, especially toward the end of the class, is I took a screenwriting class in LA actually, and one of the things the guy said over and over and over is you cannot learn to write scripts from watching movies. There's so many other stimuli happening, music and acting and the performances that distort your view of what the foundation was, which was the screenplay. So you can't watch the film and dissect, oh, that was a great script. You need need to actually go read the thing for yourself. So if you want to be a good screenwriter, that's really the place to start, is reading scripts. And I'll give you some resources for that at the end as well. All right, if there's no questions, we're going to jump just straight into your page that says, what is a screenplay on the top? I think it's 3 pages in, maybe. It's got the arrival. So for those of you who said you've never seen a script or read a script, this is what it looks like. And a screenplay is really made up of 3 pieces, and that's it. It's a scene heading, which you see there, interior Black Hawk, helicopter, pre-dawn. It's an action description, which tells you it's anything that's going on the screen that's not characters talking, is your action description pieces, and then you have dialogue, which is characters talking. Those are the only 3 pieces that you get. And I think this all might sound a little bit basic to some of you, but a lot of the screenplays that I read misunderstand what those pieces are, so we're just going to go through those one at a time and kind of make those clear. So first of all, the scene heading. These are also called slug lines. You might see them called that in books or hear them called that. It's made up of 3 pieces. It's interior or exterior, and a lot of this is really set up for planning for the production team. A screenplay is as much a blueprint that you're handing to a director as it is a story, more so than prose or something like that. So interior or exterior, the actual location, and then the time of day. And time of day is typically just day or night. You'll hear some people say only day or night, that you're not allowed to say pre-dawn, dusk, just after lunch, like that kind of stuff. It's usually sort of isolated to night or day, especially if you're writing to hand it off to like a Hollywood executive or something like that. They don't want to see all the creativity stuff. They want to know where we are, and then they want to get into the action. So you got to be kind of keep it tight, keep it as simple as possible, just so we know where we are, and then we're going to get into the action. Yeah, so let's move on to action descriptions. So this is actually a huge one where a lot of errors happen, especially with people who are used to writing prose and then come over to screenwriting. A lot of the time what happens is you're used to being able to say they thought this or they felt this in the moment. You could tell by the way they looked they were thinking about this thing. You don't get to do any of that in screenwriting. All of that is forbidden. If you cannot see it on the screen, it does not go in the screenplay, which is actually a very, even if you're not totally versed in prose, it's still a difficult thing to do, right? Because you want to direct and you're trying to convey like what this character is feeling. You don't get to do any of that. So if you look at the example of the arrival on the previous page, sorry, I don't mean to make you flip back and forth there, but where it says Ian holds a book, he's reading from it. If you read the scene, he says, language is the foundation of civilization. And he just sort of appears out of nowhere and he's reading from her book. And you kind of get the feeling he's like poking fun at her, kind of, not necessarily making fun, but sort of challenging her on her ideas and her thoughts and sort of calling her out a little bit. She says, pardon. He continues to read from it. And then the other guy says, this is Ian Donnelly. It says, neither Louise nor Ian offer to shake hands. They study one another as they talk. So even though we don't read in the action description, you know, he approached her with a tone of derision and was condescending, we still get that there's tension between this two, and he's kind of calling her out and challenging her. Does that make sense to everybody? That's a big one that gets confused. And as soon as you start doing some writing, you'll be like, holy moly, how do I get that across on the screen where you can see it and you can feel it and you understand it, but I don't get to say she was scared, right? So let's move on to dialogue. So dialogue, formatting wise, is you see it broken off into, you know, just the character heading and then, you know, what they say, right? There's a terrible sentence in here, by the way. Again, self-conscious things. But here's the deal, writing dialogue almost also must do specific things. What is that? That's terrible English. That's awful. I think I just forgot to. And then the common problems, that's later. So, yeah, you know. So let's talk about what dialogue should do, because I think the other common problem I see when people give me scripts is there's like the, hey, how's it going? Good, how are you? That's cool. Do you want to go to the store? Sure, let's go. And it's like, in an effort to make the dialogue sound natural or sound comfortable, what ends up happening is they end up just leaving all the boring stuff in the script, right? And I think it was Leonard Elmore, he said, the way to write a good book is to just take all the parts that people skip and leave them out. I was like, okay, that's good advice, I guess, but not easy to follow. So you want, dialogue should actually do things. So the first and most important job of dialogue is to actually move the story forward. There should be whatever the core conflict is of your story, which we'll get into a little bit in structure. Every piece of dialogue should advance the story forward, or it should reveal a piece of character in a meaningful way. Those are the two functions of dialogue. If you have a piece of dialogue or a scene that doesn't do those exact things, it really doesn't have any place in your script. You're just taking up the reader's time for no good reason. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So we have an example here. Interior abandoned house, night. Stephanie and Sean, this is sorry, I jumped ahead. So this is exposition. Some of the common problems you see with dialogue, the other one is exposition. I said that you need to reveal character in a meaningful way. And part of that, in prose, right, is that you want to say they came from here, they moved around a lot when they were a kid to military bases, and they never learned how to make an honest connection. So if you're not going to actually show that on screen, how do you get that across if that's an important part of the character? And a lot of times what happens with dialogue is the way to do that is through exposition, which is like revealing information as the characters talk. Exposition is not bad. You'll hear people say like, oh, that was too expository, or that was too much exposition. Exposition in and of itself is not bad. There's good exposition though, and there's bad exposition. So here's a silly little example that I wrote. Interior abandoned house night. Stephanie and Sean sit next to a fire eating canned vegetables. Zombies shuffle and groan outside. Sean, thank you for the help back there. Stephanie, don't mention it. Sean, I'm so glad you did 2 tours of Iraq and had an incredible marksmanship record before the zombie apocalypse happened and your dad died. Stephanie, wow, Sean, you know a lot about me. He shrugs and tosses the empty can into the fire. I just thought the audience should know about why you're a badass. Stephanie, that's not the right way to do it. So you'll see this in movies, and you'll see this actually a lot in like first drafts of script, because you're, as a writer, sometimes you're first drafting, you're like, okay, I have to get this out, but I also have to get my first draft done. And so you'll just cram things in there. And it feels more like the writer is telling the audience, that like, hey, you need to know this piece of information, rather than the character actually revealing it naturally through conversation. Does that distinction make sense to everybody? Okay. So here's an example I like. I've been watching The Dark Knight a lot lately. I don't know why, but it is awesome. It happens early on though. So we get the bank robbery at the beginning. The Joker robs the bank. Has everyone seen The Dark Knight? Yeah. Okay. There's the bank robbery happening. We get the sense that Batman has mostly cleaned up the streets, and there's just a few ruffians, but everyone's kind of scared of him, that kind of thing. And then now we're in the new Batcave with Bruce Wayne and Butler guy, Alfred, this guy. So Wayne says, Alfred's telling him, you've inspired people, you've inspired these vigilantes, and Wayne says, this isn't exactly what I had in mind when I said I wanted to inspire people. Alfred, I know, but things are improving. Look at the new district attorney. Wayne indicates the monitor, a handsome man in a suit. Wayne, I am, closely, I need to know if he can be trusted. Alfred looks at the other image, the DA at a meeting, campaigning, helping someone out of a cab. It's Rachel. Alfred, are you interested in his character or his social circle? Wayne, who's Rachel spends her time with is her business. That's good exposition. It didn't take our time to hold our hand and be like, well, first of all, they switched actresses from the first Batman to the second Batman. So when we see this woman on screen, that's the first time you see her, I think, and you need to know that's Rachel, right? If you came from the first to the second. Second, you know now that the romance that happened from the first movie to the second movie, where Bruce Wayne and Rachel had a romance going on. Now that's done, and now she's with the DA. We get all of that in this quick, who she spends her time with, that's her business. We know who Rachel is, we know who Harvey Dent is, we know the nature of all the relationships in 5 pieces of dialogue. That's good exposition. That could have been easily bungled, where it's ever since Rachel started dating the DA, I have no interest in knowing, who she spends her time with is her business. And we get a lot more about, he cuts it off, doesn't want to talk about it. We know where Bruce Wayne is at in his relationship with Rachel. Good? Everyone see that? Okay, cool. On On the nose dialogue is another, so again, exposition is not good or bad. It can be done well or it can be done poorly. On the nose dialogue, you'll hear that too, is pretty much always bad, because it's when a character says something like, you know, I'm really angry with you, and it's just sort of out of nowhere, they're bluntly honest all of a sudden. Humans don't talk that way. We lie and we beat around the bush and we avoid issues and we change the subject. That's what good dialogue sounds like. And so the more you can do, like, has anyone ever watched like Gilmore Girls or Parenthood, those shows? Yeah? Those are fantastic examples of, I'm a little bit ashamed that I've watched all of Gilmore Girls from start to finish, and the Netflix special, sorry. But they have really fast, snappy dialogue, and they're jumping on top of each other and they're interrupting each other. Parenthood did the same thing, where it's families don't, they're like, okay, little Johnny, now it's your turn to talk. Daddy's finished. It's like everyone's talking over each other. Everyone's trying to get their point across. Having an ear for what good dialogue sounds like is people avoiding, people trying to get what they want while avoiding admitting and being honest about their feelings and their thoughts. So on the nose dialogue is pretty much always bad. There are moments of honesty, but it should be like this little sliver where they're pushed to the point where they must be honest and they have no other choice. If they're just honest for no reason, that's bad dialogue. So quick plug, we are going to do a characters and dialogue, this is going to be sort of a quick overview of what is screenwriting, what is story structure, etc. We're going to do 2 more classes next month, and then the following month they're going to be a little bit deeper dive. So next month is going to be how to take your first draft or your rough draft and really revise it, give you checklists to like clean it up, do things like that. And then the class after that is going to be a deep dive on creating characters and how to write good dialogue with some tips and tricks there. So if you enjoy this class, please come back to the next 2 over the next 2 months. Any questions so far? Okay. So a lot of the time, when people first start screenwriting, they see all these rules and all these formats, like you can't reveal character exposition, you can't have backstory in your action description, like why all the rules? And I'm a writer, I should be creative, I should be able to flow free, stuff like that. It's things writers say. But with screenplay specifically, there are a lot of rules, and they're not for no reason. And with screenplay format in particular, the first issue with that is time. If your screenplay is properly formatted, like you see in the Arrival example or in the Bruce Wayne example, you have the screen heading, like a specific amount of spacing, action descriptions, and then the indentations on the dialogue. All of that is set up so that 1 page of script equals 1 minute roughly of film on screen. And so why that's important is, let's say you have an 80-page script, which is the 80 to 120 is sort of feature length, script length. Let's say you write a script that's 80 pages, 84 pages, and 20 pages of that is like character exposition and backstory and garbage dialogue that's going to have to get thrown away. You don't have an 80-page script, you have a 60-page script maybe, and that's not feature length. That's an issue. And so you have to follow these rules from a economy standpoint, knowing that when you hand this to a director to say, make this movie, they know that if it's a 98-page script, it's roughly going to be a 98-page minute, or a 98-page movie, give or take, right? Closely related to that is production planning. If a director has to go through and like X out a bunch of your like backstory that he can't show on screen, and he's just going through, you're making everyone in the production team's job twice as hard as it actually needs to be, because they have to go fix your script by you putting things in there that they can't show on screen. That seems to be a big hurdle for a lot of folks. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And finally, if you you said, this is something, like in the back there, you said that this is something that you really want to do. What you'll find is as you send your script out into the world, you can look at a script and know if it's amateur or not. I can look at a script and be like, holy Moses, they had no idea what they were doing with action descriptions, or like this dialogue that takes up the whole page, way too long. We need something in there. So there are expectations around professionalism, just from like if you're going to send it into a contest or you want to send it to someone in LA or something like that. They expect a script to look a certain way. They expect it to be formatted a certain way. So by you not doing it or choosing to not do it, you're kind of putting a red flag on your script as amateur. if that makes sense. All right, so wrapping this up, how to write a screenplay. There are two components to this. The second piece is what we're going to dive into in a little bit, which is story structure, creating log lines, outlining a story, how to come up with a story idea that works for film, things like that. The first one I just want to get out of the way with the 12-point Courier font indentations on dialogue, all that stuff that sounds really complicated. Just buy a software or get a free software. It's not worth it to try. Man, I can't believe you did it by hand. That's insane. That's unbelievable. But I get them. I get scripts sometimes that are in Microsoft Word, and I'm like, it blows. I'm like, why? Why did there are free softwares that you can do this with? Really, the easiest way is to buy a word processor that is specifically made for screenwriting that does all of that formatting for you. So from a technical side, how do I do it? Just get a software. So the second thing, the second part is what we're going to jump into now, which is story structure. And that went faster than I expected. So if you have any questions, now would be a good time. Thoughts? Feelings?
What did you say about? You said something with Elmore was the name?
Leonard Elmore.
Leonard Elmore.
Yeah, he said something like, the way to write a good story is to just take all the parts that people skip and leave them out. He was being he was being funny.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Got me off guard.
But it's a good point. Like anyone who's done any fiction writing you've probably heard a quote similar to enter late, leave early. That kind of thing. You want to enter a scene. You want to start a movie kind of like in the middle of the action. It works like I was saying with dialogue, like hey, how's it going? Good. How are you? You can skip all that, right? You can jump into a scene where two people are talking at a diner and they're in the middle of a conversation, and by the way you write the dialogue, you get the gist of what they're talking about, but we skipped all the boring stuff. So he was being funny, but there's very good advice buried down underneath that for sure. Yeah. Cool. All right, so I think what we'll do then is we'll go into some of the overview stuff of story and structure, and then maybe take a quick break, and then we will get into some of the more hands-on, like writing log lines, and actually building out some story outlines and answering questions, and maybe if anyone's feeling up for it, maybe workshopping and kind of improving log lines, that kind of thing. So if you'll flip to your page where it says "A story is" at the top. Actually, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Before you read that, does anyone have a definition they would give of this is what a story is? This is how I would define a story?
I'd say a story is a character who has to go through some sort of turmoil or conflict in order to change that person's perspective, or very rarely, but sometimes they stay the same and others are changed through it. But every character in the story has to go through that arc.
Right. You have taken screenwriting classes. Yeah. Anyone else have if it's just your personal view, that's fine.
It's like a journey, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So here's the definition I've got for you. And this is a screenwriting particular definition, because there are other types of stories out there, but when it comes to storytelling through film in particular, this gets a little bit more rigid. A story is a flawed person who wants something badly, but impossible obstacles stand in their way. They struggle to get it and learn a valuable lesson along the way. So I would agree with what you said, Luke, and I would just add the other thing of there's something specific. In most films, there's something specific they're trying to get. They go through the struggles trying to get that thing, and then they learn the lessons sort of along the way, right? And so if you break that down, like we did with what is a screenplay, we got dialogue, action description, headings. You can break a story actually down to its separate parts and its ingredients when you're planning a story. And so first of all, it has to be a person with a problem, right? So in our definition, it's a flawed person. And so nobody wants to see a story about someone perfect getting something they want. That's really boring. And if you look at any movie, you'll notice that in the first 10%-ish of the movie, which we'll get into that in a second, but it's used setting up who is this character, what are their flaws, and then what is the thing that they need, right? Whether that's the dodgeball, right? Like the whole first thing is he's like brushing his. Do you guys ever see dodgeball? Yeah. Okay. Where he's like brushing his teeth with beer, and he's like just this total like down on his luck guy. He runs this gym that nobody wants to go to, that kind of stuff, right? And so we want to see somebody who's struggling, so that when they go into their trials, we're rooting for them. In the Dark Knight, for example, Bruce Wayne. The whole setup in the beginning is about him almost being like he's done the job and he's looking for someone to take up his mantle. He's kind of bored. He's looking to pass the torch. And that person for him is Harvey Dent, but we see that void, that problem of, I can't do this forever, and the job is kind of done. Enter the Joker, and now Batman's need, his arc, is that he's going to become the hero that he really needs to be through being crushed by this new kind of criminal, right? So that's the problem. A want, you'll hear this also called the outer goal. This one hangs people up too a little bit, is it must be, in screenwriting, it must be a visible goal that they can attain. At the end of the movie, we can see them like graduating and walking and grabbing a diploma. We can see them like getting the check for $1 kajillion. We can see them defeating the bad guy. So the want is always something outward, and it's always something visible that can be shown on screen. The need, this is where it gets into the idea of a character arc. So they need an outer goal and they need an inner goal. So when we establish the problem at the beginning of like, so, you know, Batman wants to stop the Joker, but what he actually needs is to become a different kind of hero, the hero that Gotham actually needs, right? But his outward goal is stop the Joker. So, but he has to evolve inside as well. You'll see that in every movie, and you know what that is. Often at the beginning of the movie, the theme will be stated. So, like using The Dark Knight. Sorry, I've just been watching this movie like crazy. But at the beginning of The Dark Knight, he's sitting at dinner with Harvey and Rachel and the ballerina girl, and he says, "You live long enough. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And so over the course of it, Harvey's arc is he actually becomes the villain, and Batman becomes the hero he needs to be by becoming a, quote, villain. So the theme is stated at the beginning, and then the movie closes saying, you know, I'm not the hero Gotham deserves, but I'm the one it needs right now, or something like that, right? So his arc is complete. He's achieved his inner goal. You need both. If you're going to plan a movie, if you're going to write a log line, if you're going to write an effective outline, it starts with what is this guy trying to achieve, and what does he need, or girl need, and what do they need to learn along the way? What's the lesson they're going to learn at the end of the thing? And of course, the essence of a screenplay, or any story really, is conflict. You can't have, we need to see that hero struggle, and they won't achieve their inner goal unless they struggle and are constantly beaten down and have to get back up, Rocky style. If they're not going toward their outer goal and they're being opposed, they won't achieve the inner goal. They don't grow. We only grow from being crushed. That's true of us as humans. It's true in stories. Those ingredients make sense to everybody? All right, so I'm going to harp on this because this is it. This is the structure. This is how you tell stories in film. So I'm going to read that same definition, but it's going to be a little bit more of an expanded version, and then it'll make sense when we get into the full outline structure a little bit down below. So let's read it one more time. The protagonist is dissatisfied in their ordinary life. They have a problem. So when a new opportunity presents itself that can fix their problem, they choose to go on a journey to achieve their outer goal, but as they face increasingly difficult obstacles, they will be pushed to the breaking point where they will learn the lesson they need to learn, which empowers them to get the thing they want. After achieving their outer and inner goals, they return to their ordinary world transformed. Good stuff, yeah? So out of that, here's the punchline, and really, if you're going to write screenplays, you can get a lot of other stuff wrong. You can learn how to edit. You can learn how to clean up your action description. You can learn how to write better dialogue. The most fundamental thing that if you miss this, you will have a bad screenplay is that story equals transformation. If we look at the opening image and we look at the closing image and the character is exactly the same, it's a bad script. And so a story, the essence of what a story is watching a protagonist change over time and we all learn a lesson. If you don't have that, you don't have a good script. You don't have a screenplay. Good? I mean, like circle that or something, right? So some examples there on the bottom of that page. Think of like some of the best stories of modern times, right? Like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Like we want to see Bilbo Baggins go from like this timid little bumpkin who likes to drink cakes and eat and drink tea and eat cakes and stuff in his little hole in his ground, but we want to see this timid little guy turn into something that can defeat a dragon. That's satisfying transformation. We want to see Katniss Everdeen go from the bumpkin from District 12. I mean, these are all like the big popular mega hit movies, right? Go from District 12, nobody, in middle of nowhere, the worst district ever, to this warrior who can take on the capital. We want to see Harry Potter be the muggle boy under the stairs and become the wizard who can take on Voldemort, right? We want that. You might not be writing a fantasy story necessarily, but you still want to have that sort of satisfying change, that it's a very clear, vivid point A, point B, I get it kind of thing. You can see the difference in this person. They've grown. They're more powerful, whatever it is in your story. Good? Okay. So let's go on to everything I just said is exactly what you're going to see again on the next page, but different. So if you go to the next one, it should say a deeper look at structure on the top. You can find a bunch of different types of structures, I guess, for screenplays, but they're not really different. So one of the most popular ones is called Save the Cat. It's a book I recommend if you've never read anything on structure. Check out Save the Cat. To me, it's the most easy to digest. You can find other books by a story by Robert McKee, but it's like this, and it's like PhD level. Like you have to really commit to that thing, and he covers everything, not just structure. If you want to get into structure, like what do I need to know to write a decent screenplay? Grab Save the Cat because it's worth a read. But his whole spiel, Blake Snyder, was actually based on a thing by a guy named Joseph Campbell, who I don't want to say created, he discovered this thing called the hero's journey. So this guy, Joseph Campbell, he's an academic. You can go read this book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, or I think he has one called The Hero's Journey. He basically studied thousands of stories across all cultures all over the world and said, are there commonalities to stories? And the answer is yes. He found out that no matter what culture, no matter what language, that typically stories follow a certain pattern, and he coined that the hero's journey. So for whatever reason, I don't fully understand this. This is like one of those mysteries of why is there music? Why are there cave paintings? Why do people do art? It's like one of those kinds of questions. Why is this the story format that works? I don't know. But it works. And this, for some reason, humans are hardwired to crave and want and be satisfied by stories that fit this format. Is that too unbelievable for anybody? That one gets pushed back sometimes. Okay, cool. I mean, really, if you look at even look at pop music, right? You have sort of this, it builds to an all is lost moment about 3/4 of the way through. If you look toward the Act 3-ish, about 3/4 of the way through any story, there's this all is lost, dark night of the soul. It's a complete change of pace. The hero learns what they need to learn, and then they're ready to march on toward the finale, right? If you even look at pop music, though, it follows a similar deal. You get an opening image, so to speak, an opening sound. You get verse, chorus that builds, and then you have a bridge that changes the whole thing. I don't know why I keep thinking about this song. Again, very embarrassing. It's like Gilmore Girls embarrassing. Pink, so raise your glass if you are wrong. Right. Okay, yeah, party anthem, right? That it builds and builds and builds, and then it cuts out at the bridge, and it's like, oh, my drink is empty, that sucks, which is like the all is lost moment of the party, right? And then, so we have this 3/4 mark, and then it bursts through to one huge epic finale, and then the song's over, right? Pop songs follow that same formula. It's more or less this exact same thing. For whatever reason, humans are wired to want things that fit this pattern. I don't know why, but once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. It'll ruin movies and music for you, maybe, for a little while, and then you'll be like, oh no, okay, I get it. And you'll start to appreciate the craft, I think, that's underneath it. Because I think when you start studying structure, it is like you start to see all the pulleys and gears behind it that make something work, and it's a little bit disenchanting at first. And then you start to appreciate the craft on a professional level, which is where you want to get. Because I think a lot of people who first want to get into screenwriting sort of, they're more enamored by the mystery and glamour of making movies than they are the work of crafting stories, if that makes sense. So that's what structure is. It's going to ruin stuff for you for a little bit, and then it'll be good. I promise. You look like you got something to say. Okay. So let's take a look at this. So 3-act structure, you may have heard some of this. Act 1, according to Joseph Campbell's model and that kind of thing, and we mentioned it above, is the ordinary world. There's a protagonist that's dissatisfied in their ordinary world. And that's going to be your Act 1, and that's typically about 25% of your script. And this is done in percentages because no matter how long your script is, your percentages more or less need to hold. If you have a 100-page script, your break into Act 2 is going to come around page 25. If your script is 120 pages, I'm not good at math, whatever that is, 25% of 120. So again, that opening image, the first page, the first thing we see when we meet the character, that is absolutely critical. We need a clear shot of who is this bumpkin from District 12 that needs to grow, that kind of thing. Theme stated. I mentioned in Dark Knight, there was it is about 5% actually through. I was reading the script last night. It is about 5%, and you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Now we know what the movie's about. The rest of the movie is going to be about that, and we know that the closing image is going to be Batman saying something about how he became the villain, but it's okay, or whatever, which is exactly what happens. So that first 1 through 10% of your script is going to be the setup of who is this flawed person that needs to grow and how do they need to grow. At the 10% mark of your script is where the catalyst enters. Something new comes into their life that's going to send them, that makes them question, right? And for Batman, it's the Joker enters, and he has to rethink how he's been fighting crime all these years. The movie Wreck-It Ralph, which we analyzed into oblivion in my master's program, which is a weird movie to overanalyze. All those kids' movies are, it'll drive you a little nuts. But we see him in a support group, right? And he's like, I'm a bad guy, but I'm not a bad guy. And he's all sad about it, and he doesn't accept himself. And then he sees the Bob Builder guy get a medal, and he puts it like, that's his catalyst. He's like, if I get a medal, I won't be a bad guy anymore. And that's his 10% mark catalyst. Something enters his world and changes the way he thinks about his life, and now he's starting to think about, okay, I need to go on this journey, right? So in between, there's 2 points in a script that they're called reaction beats, and so this catalyst enters, and it's like, holy crap, I have to rethink my whole way of life. We need to see that in the script before we jump into Act 2. And so you need a moment in there where the character, the protagonist, is sort of like, I don't know what to do with this. This could change everything, but I could die, and I don't know if I should go on this journey. Does Bilbo Baggins really want to go out into the dangerous world out of the comfort of his fire? That kind of thing. And then the break into Act 2, that 25%-ish mark that separates Act 1 and Act 2, we have to see the hero make a hard decision that I'm going on this journey. It can't be they were thrown into it, they weren't forced into it, they're not reacting into it. They must say, yes, I'm going to change my life, I have this problem, and if I get that thing, it can be fixed. I will choose to step into this new world. We need a hard break, a hard decision from the protagonist between Act 1 and Act 2. Some of this will probably... Yeah.
And also, just as he was saying, like with Wreck-It Ralph thinks that if I get this medal, it's going to make my life completely better. But that's usually not the thing that actually makes that person's life better.
Exactly right.
Revealed later in the story. But he's got to want that thing and got to decide to go get it.
Yeah, getting the medal is what pulls him into Act 2. But then once he's in Act 2, he realizes that he needs something else, and he meets Vanellope and realizes, okay, I need to help this girl. And accidentally, he kind of just decides to help her, right? And then over the course of helping her, he actually becomes a good guy. And so he gets his need met, his inner goal, and as he's trying, I think he does get some kind of medal at the end. She gives him so it wouldn't have been satisfying if he didn't get a medal still, right? Because that was his outer goal that set him on the journey at the beginning. So he does get both, but not in the way he expected, and it's a very satisfying story. Great point. So Act 2, when the character steps into Act 2, it should be in many ways the opposite and upside down from what the character knew and experienced in Act 1. For Wreck-It Ralph, he goes into the different video games, and it's like this neon-colored candy land, and it's very different from the world of him climbing a building and falling off and climbing a building and falling off and getting defeated. He's like in this bright world with racing colors and this bouncy girl, and he learns to have friendships, and it's like it's the polar opposite of everything he knew in Act 1. That's what you want in a good Act 2, even if it's not that exaggerated, even if it's not Bilbo Baggins fighting orcs or whatever. Frodo Baggins? I don't know. Like the screenplay I'm working on now is a story about a guy who left home a long time ago, and he has become successful in his own right somewhere else, and he has written off his family. He doesn't want to go home. It's none of that. And so when he enters his Act 2, it's coming home to the world that he knew, but he's an alien now, right? So, his home is the polar opposite of where he now is in his life. So that's how that can work, even in a more of like family drama type genre. You still want a hard break from old world, new world is different. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So some of these things. So let's do this. The B story. Whenever there's a romance character, if part of your character's arc is that they need to fall in love, part of that is like that's going to come in at the B story. It's going to come in at the 30% mark. We need to see them in their new world, and that's kind of when that love interest story really, really kicks into gear. Often, if they have a partner or like a sidekick or something like that, this is where that sidekick character is going to really kick into gear, because the function of both a romance character and a sidekick character, often called a reflection character, the function of them is to like kick them in the butt and move them down the path toward finishing their arc, finishing their outer and inner goals. So all of that doesn't kick in until Act 2, until the B story. Fun in games, Blake Snyder also calls this the promise of the premise, right? So if you're writing an action movie that is going to have like, crazy battles with aliens on the highway while eating popsicles, like that's your deal. That's going to happen in this fun and game section. Like the stuff you think of like being in the trailer, the really juicy, fun action stuff, that's going to happen in the fun and game section. So like the screenplay I'm working on right now, a lot of the stuff, the conflict that happens between these brothers where they're ribbing each other and he's giving them crap for how he, never came home, but it's kind of funny and cheeky and brotherly. All of that happens in that fun and game section. So it's that type of beat. Does that make sense to everybody? Whether it's a drama, whether it's an act, okay. The next big one is the midpoint. So the characters stepped into the new world. We have met the other characters, whether it's a mentor or a sidekick or a romance. We've had some fun in games, and the hero has like made some progress toward their outer goal. Then they have a major setback at the midpoint. At the 50% mark, something big needs to happen that makes the character have to ask the question, holy crap, do I keep going? Like the stakes need to go up, and they need to say, I don't know if I have it in me to do this, and then they choose to do it, right? So Kung Fu Panda, which we'll get into here in a little bit, another one of my favorites, is Po gets like ridiculed by the Furious Five, and Master Shifu, that's part of the B story in that one. Master Shifu's been like trying to thwart him, and he doesn't deserve to be the Dragon Warrior, and I'll show him. And then it hits this point where Master Oogway dies, and Master Shifu realizes, okay, I don't have a choice. I have to have Po do this. And then the midpoint decision falls on Po, where he says, I can't do this. And Master Shifu just says, trust me. And he says, okay, I'll do it. I'll keep training. I'll try to be the Dragon Warrior. And then Po keeps going down his path toward being the Dragon Warrior. We need something big there. Your midpoint moment has to be big. Not too big, though, because the big one is coming. Okay, so after the midpoint, this is where, if we want to use the Kung Fu Panda example, right, yeah. The bad guys close in moment. So that happens, right? And the Furious Five see it, and they go and they try to stop Tai Lung, who is the villain. He's like the cheetah guy who's really BA. And they face him, and they get killed because Tai Lung is too strong. And now we know that even the Furious Five can't take him down. This dude is really strong, right? I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. But then we see Tai Lung making progress toward coming back to the Jade Palace to kill Master Shifu, to stop the Dragon Warrior, to steal the scroll to become the Dragon Warrior. All of that happens in that bad guys close in moment. So after we've seen the hero make some progress, we've seen them have a setback, but they decide to persevere. Now the villains are going to really barrel down and moving toward the climax of the story. Which leads us to the all is lost moment and the dark night of the soul. So this is where your character, the bad guys have ramped up, they've rallied, they've doubled down too, and they're going to come at the hero full force, and it looks like they're destroyed and they can't win, and this is it. The story is over. The hero lost. This is one where you want to crap on your protagonist as hard as you possibly can. They have to lose everything, and in particular, it has to seem like their outer goal is completely out of reach. It's gone. They're never going to get it. In the movie Roar's Law, in post-production coming soon, it was like we hit this like really hard. Like she fails the bar. She's like trying to become a lawyer. She fails the bar exam. Her mom is like completely off the rails. It looks like everything she's been going for is done. It's over, and she spirals. And this is where her friend, her reflection character, her sidekick comes along. And then there's this dark night of the soul moment where they kind of sit in it, like it's gonna be okay. No, it's not. But then she goes to a Bible study thing and she learns the lesson she needs to learn. So the dark night of the soul. So the all is lost is like a single defining moment where they lose everything. They must be crushed absolutely. The dark night of the soul moment though is another reaction beat. If you look at the beginning, where we had the debate, the catalyst comes into their life, and then they have to say, gosh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can go forward. I don't know if I want to take this journey. This is like a mirror reaction beat on the back end. So they get crushed, and their life is over, and then they have a reaction beat of like, I'm done. I can't go any further. And then this is where they learn the inner journey lesson that they need to learn. This is where Batman learns, like, I need to be a bad guy to defeat this bad guy, and he sets up his cell phone thing, and was it the Fantastic Mr. Fox is like, I can't be a part of this. You've gone too far. This is evil. This is wrong. And he walks out on Batman, and Batman's like, this is what I have to do to stop this guy. So he, in his own way, becomes a bad guy. He learns that in his Dark Night of the Soul moment after Rachel dies, and spoilers, all that stuff. Does that make sense to everybody? That beat, that section of the story? Okay, so they've learned. After the Dark Night of the Soul, they've learned whatever inner lesson they need to learn that gives them the inner strength to keep going. And this is where they rally. They gather up their friends and their allies that they've met along the way in Act 2. They use all the growth and strength and power that they acquired in Act 2, and they throw themselves at whatever that final nemesis showdown is with everything they've got, and take them down. They get their outer goal, and then they go home, back to their Act World 1, but transformed. They've gone through the old saying, like you go around the world to see your home with fresh eyes. It's like that kind of thing. They return to their Act 1 world, but transformed and new, and they have the power to fix the problem that they had at the very beginning, or it is fixed already. Does that circle, that loop make sense? Okay. If any of you are more visualist learners, toward the back, I think it's in there. Toward the back, there are some. I think it's going to be your second to last. Nope. So yeah, there's the biggest screenplay problems toward the back, and then behind that, or in front of that, there's a circle diagram and two rectangles. That's the one. So however, like I said, like you'll see different versions of this. You'll hear about different versions of this. You'll read different outlines. But essentially, they are all the exact same thing. So if these help you as well, like we were talking about the pop song and all that's what it does. It builds and builds and builds until this 3/4 mark, which is that big all is lost, crushed, never mind, I know how to fix this, let's go get the bad guy kind of thing. If it helps you to think of it more in a circular thing where they start at a place, they get the call to adventure, which is that catalyst, that 10% catalyst. They cross from the known into the unknown, go through that whole hero's journey of Act 2, and then they cross the threshold again from the unknown back into the known, but they're transformed. If it helps you to think of it, it helps me actually to think of it more circular, that they go out into the world to achieve something, to do something, to learn something, and then they come back to where they started, but they're different. So yeah, however that helps you, there's a couple different resources for you to sort of work off of as well. The next one, Michael Haig's 5 points, again, just if this is too much, because I actually remember when I wrote my first screenplay, I thought the save the cat thing was overwhelming. I was like, how do okay, now I have to do this beat, now I have to do this beat, and I felt like I was writing too mechanically. But I wanted to write with good structure, but I was having a hard time micromanaging through it. I found Michael Haig's 5 points to be a little bit better. It gives you big tentpole moments rather than these micro beats that must happen kind of thing. I still use the Save the Cat beat sheet to go back and edit and revise and improve. But when I'm doing a rough draft or a first draft, often I will use something more like Michael Haig's 5 points, where you just have these big 5 turning points, right? But they're the same thing. 10% that he gets the opportunity, something interrupts his life. 25% change, he decides to take the journey, to step into Act 2. You have the 50% point. He calls it the point of no return, but it's the high stakes. Stakes are raised. Something big happens. The hero decides to double down. The major setback is what he calls that all is lost moment. And then the hero, after all is lost, after the major setback, realizes what they need to do, how to defeat the bad guy, leads into the climax. But we still have the setup and we still have the aftermath. We have those opening images and those closing images that show transformation. So no matter how you slice it, it's the same thing. And so I guess to all that to say, find however you need to hear this, that it works for you. That's the big takeaway. More so than do these points exactly. The Pixar story formula, right? Has anyone seen this before? It's pretty famous. It makes the round. Yeah. Oh, you're into animation, right? Yeah. Once upon a, this is what Pixar says, or what somebody said Pixar said, or something. It's made the rounds on the internet. Once upon a time, there was a blank. Every day blank until one day blank. Because of that blank until finally blank. It's the same. Once upon a time, there was a protagonist with a problem, right? There was a robot who compacted trash every day but wanted to hold hands with a girl. One day, a girl robot shows up and steals his plant. Because of that, they go to space and he becomes a hero. Until finally, they go back to Earth and he holds her hand. That's Pixar stories, right? But if you were to expand that and fill that out, it would look exactly like these other two story structures we're talking about. Again, when you look at this, these are structural percentages. They're not page counts. Just a friendly reminder there. Yeah, even if you're writing a short, this is one of the things we had to do in my master's program was write a 10-page screenplay, but that fit this. So you have 1 page to do the setup leading up to the catalyst, and then by page 2.5, they're stepping into Act 2. Right, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. No matter whether it's a 10-page or whether it's a 100-page, this is the structure that you follow. Questions?
Well, what's the everyday part on the Pixar story formula? So there's the setup was once upon a time there was a blank. What would that?
Oh, so once upon a time, with WALL-E, right? Once upon a time, there was a trash compacting robot. Every day he compacted trash and collected treasures, and watched Hello, Dolly, and dreamt of holding a girl's hand, right? Yeah. I have a feeling that this is one of those things that got said in passing, and then it got codified into this is how Pixar does it, and it's maybe not how they do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still a good example, I think, but. Okay, so let's jump over to the next one, the story examples. And again, so these are based on that save the cat type structure. So Kung Fu Panda, this is a traditional hero arc where a bumpkin wants something, they go after it, they learn a lesson, etc. So in the setup, has everyone seen Kung Fu Panda? Yeah. Okay. Poe dreams of being a kung fu warrior, but he's stuck in the boring life of making noodles with his dad. Meanwhile, Tai Lung escapes from prison, and we learn that the Dragon Warrior is the only one who can stop him. Poe journeys to the Forbidden Palace. Remember, he's like dragging his noodle cart up there because his dad makes him, to get a glimpse of the Furious Five. At the 10% mark, he straps onto the rocket, the fireworks. I love kung fu. Lands, and he accidentally interrupts the Dragon Warrior naming ceremony. That's the catalyst, right? Something dramatic has happened that interrupted his life, and then there's like a little bit of a back and forth. He can't be the Dragon Warrior. Shifu and Master Oogway argue, and then Master Oogway decides, no, he must be the Dragon Warrior. Poe says, like, okay, let's do this, because he wants to be a kung fu master, and he enters into the Jade Palace. The villagers hoist him up, and he rides into the Jade Palace. 25 to 50%, we see the B story come in with Master Shifu kind of vowing that he will do everything he can to thwart Poe, because he still, even though Master Oogway dictated it, he still doesn't believe he should be the Dragon Warrior. So Master Shifu is kind of, there's no romance. He is a sidekick, but like in an unexpected way. And by trying to thwart him, he actually pushes Poe in his training to like become the Dragon Warrior, even though he is kind of doing it on accident. At the same time, we see all the shenanigans with Poe training and getting smashed in the face with the spinning blade things and all it's a good time. As I mentioned earlier, the 50% stakes are raised is where Master Oogway dies, and Master Shifu has lost his master, and he realizes that he needs to be a master to Poe as well. At the same time that's happening, Poe has just been ruthlessly taunted by the Furious Five and doesn't know if he can do this. He believes he can't do it. And then by the end of that 50% mark, he decides, okay, I will trust you, Master Shifu. I will continue to train. Bad guys close in. We covered that one. Tai Lung comes, beats up the Furious Five. And then the all is lost moment. They're running out of time. Poe takes the scroll, opens it, and it's blank. And so he's done all this training, and now what? They don't get it. The Dragon Warrior thing is done. It's over. They decide to pack up the village and just try to run away from Tai Lung because he's going to destroy everything. That's that all is lost thing. His outer goal is to become the Dragon Warrior, and this is the moment where he's farthest from it, and it looks the most impossible. Of course, he goes back to his dad's house and learns that there is no secret ingredient and the scroll's blank because it's all inside of him, and he accepts himself and learns to find his inner kung fu strength, and he becomes the Dragon Warrior, defeats Tai Lung, huzzah. And so that's all good, right? Like, he beat the guy. We could probably technically end there, but if you look at our opening image was him dreaming of being a kung fu warrior and not being that. So the critical moment for his arc is actually where he comes out of the dust. He's defeated Tai Lung, and the Furious Five come up to him and they bow. The kung fu masters that he's admired all his life are now bowing to him. Like, that's the end of his outward goal is actually complete. He's one of them now, right? So that actually keep stuff like that in mind. A lot of movies like that, especially kids movies, have these like little sweet moments that you would almost miss if you were just watching casually, but if you watch analytically, you'll see these little things like, holy crap, like this moment was good, but it only worked because they did this little thing right here. You'll start to see stuff like that once you start analyzing structure. Okay, I get this question quite a bit too, like what if, so let's go to the next one, which is Seven. Has everyone seen Seven? No? Okay, it's an older movie. It's got Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. It's about
If you haven't, you're missing out on a gem.
It's about a serial killer who kills people based on the 7 deadly sins. He's like it's a really good serial killer movie. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry.
It's really David Fincher. It's so good.
I'm gonna ruin it for you guys. I'm sorry. But one of the questions I get is like, okay, what if my story doesn't have a happy ending? What if it's a tragic story? So in the last one we have traditional arc, right? All is lost comes at 75%, and then we have this happy finale. You will do the inverted of that if you want to do a tragic ending in your story, if you want to have bad at the end. So I'll explain this one a little deeper since most of you haven't seen it. At 1 to 10%, we see a guy named William Somerset. He's this like super burned out cop. He's kind of apathetic. You can tell he like kind of wants to care, but he's in such an awful situation that the other cops kind of make fun of him and give him crap for caring about his job. And he's just like, I'm done. I want to get out. Like this job isn't worth it anymore. Like that's where he starts.
Is that Morgan Freeman?
Yeah. Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt is his partner, and Kevin Spacey ends up being the serial. I feel bad I'm spoiling this, but let's proceed in the name of education. So the catalyst is part of another part of the setup is Brad Pitt's character, Detective Mills, also shows up. He's this transfer, and it's kind of Morgan Freeman's job to kind of show him the ropes real quick, and then Morgan Freeman's retiring and getting out of there. The catalyst comes when they find a really horrific murder scene, and they realize over the course of the debate phase, which comes in between 10 and 25%, they're like, he's like, I'm retiring, I don't know if I want to do this, but then it's this huge serial killer case, and he decides, hit the break from Act 1 to Act 2, he decides to stay on with the new transfer and finish out this case. They'll finish out this last case together, and then he's going to retire. That's the break from Act 1 to 2. It's him deciding to take the case instead of retiring in apathy and hating himself forever. It's fun in games. That's a weird way to phrase it, but we see the B story. The Detective Somerset kind of gets to know, because Mills is a new transfer. He goes over to dinner at their house and gets to know him, gets to know Detective Mills and Detective Mills' wife, and they all kind of bond. And he's like, you start to see like these little glimmers of hope in Somerset that maybe he's not all gone. Maybe he's not that apathetic and burned out anymore. Maybe he can have friends again, stuff like that. And then the fun in games here is a lot more grisly, terrible murders that unfold. And they put the pieces together and start chasing down the killer is called John Doe in the movie. They start piecing these things together and making progress on the case. So the midpoint comes in this one. The stakes are raised. They track these clues, and Somerset does a brilliant job. He's a great detective. He's actually good at his job when he puts himself into it. They track John Doe's apartment. They show up at his apartment. They narrowly catch him. There's a cool chase scene, jumping out of windows and stuff, breaking into apartments. And then Mills almost gets killed by John Doe and doesn't get to see his face. And for whatever reason, John Doe lets him live, but it's like this narrow brush with death. Now it's like the stakes get raised. Something really big happens. And because of that, right, now Mills is rattled, and they just like go after him harder, but so does John Doe. John Doe ramps up his killings, and they get more gruesome, and you get the feeling that he's plotting something perhaps more sinister in that bad guys close in phase, right? We see a couple more murders, they get worse, and tension, this is important too, tensions rise between Somerset and Mills as well. Mills starts to call Somerset out on his apathy, you think you're tough or whatever for not giving a drag me down in there, and you want me to say, yeah, life sucks too, but I'm not going to do it. And so Somerset has to think about that. Like, that's part of his arc, is being challenged by Mills along the way. So Somerset's like, yeah, okay, maybe this hopeful kid is right. Maybe it's not all bad. Maybe this is worth fighting for. You start to see a little bit of a glimpse of that, which is like a trademark thing of a tragic ending. We start to see there's hope, right? At this bad guys close in phase, that's a bad sign. That's always a bad sign. So the all is lost moment in a tragedy, the 75% mark, this is where John Doe turns himself in. So in a tragedy where we have the lowest point they can get, we have a false victory. If you want to write that down, I should have written that down for you. In a tragedy, though, that 75% thing is a false victory, where it seems as if they have achieved their outer goal, right? And the Dark Night of the Soul moment in 7 is actually really, really cool, because they kind of know something's off, and they know John Doe is up to something. And then the really smart thing that this script does, and that, what's his name, David Fincher, the director did, because he changed the ending a little bit, and this is like one of those ones where it's like, yeah, he was right, the writer had it wrong, the director did it right. you get these really cool moments where they're just talking in the bathroom, and you can see they've finally bonded, and they're friends, and it's like they're friends and they're partners, and they trust each other, and this is gonna end. Like, they're gonna catch John Doe, they're gonna get the last 2 victims, he's gonna go to dinner at Mills's house, and everything's gonna be good. Like, you get that feeling, and David Fincher did such a nice job pacing that you breathe, right? There's a false victory, and then you're like, this is gonna be good. Not so much. So the finale is they go out to the desert. Part of the deal John Doe makes when he turns himself in is like, I'm gonna give you the 2 last victims, and I don't know what the deal is. I'm gonna give you the 2 last victims, and you don't execute me or something like that. So
I think it was just that he would confess to all the murders or something like that, but he had to be present to show.
That's what it was. So he takes the 2 detectives. That's the deal. It's John Doe in the back seat and the 2 detectives in the front seat. They drive out to the middle of nowhere and they just wait. I'm so sorry.
It's one of the best bad guy monologues too. When he's in the backseat talking, it's so great.
It's really good. Yeah. So it turns out though, they get there and it turns out that I'm sorry, I'm ruining this for you. Mills's wife was the victim. Was like one of the last victims. The 2 bodies I'll give you. Head shows up in a box. You've probably seen this on the internet. Kind of memey, like the what's in the box. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that stuff. It's funny. Check it out. It's gruesome, but the memes are funny. So the wife's head's in the box, and he flips out. Mills ends up killing John Doe on his knees in the desert, just executes him, and
because he revealed that the wife was pregnant, and Mills didn't know.
Yeah. But in his eyes, John Doe's final victory is himself being the final victim, because his sin was pride or envy. He envied Mills's life, that kind of thing, right? So we actually see the bad guy winning. He completes his thing. He wanted to get killed. He gets everything he wants in the end, and the heroes totally lose, right? That's the tragic ending. Does that make sense? Everything else is fundamentally the same, but the all is lost moment and the finale flip, or they're not flip spaces, but they're it's a false positive instead of a negative, and then the ending is negative instead of positive. Good. Did I say that good English, right? Well, okay. So, but at the end of 7, the closing image, you still have the opening image, closing image. At the beginning, we saw that he was this burned out cop that didn't care, and he was just ready to retire and get out of there. And they're watching Mills arrested in the back of the car, driving off, and a detective leans over to Somerset, and he says, where are you going to be, or what are you going to do? And he's like, I'll be around, which it's very artsy and mysterious, right? But he says, in the beginning, he was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. And at the end, he says, I'll be around. And then he reads a quote, it's a voiceover at the end, and he says, Hemingway said that the world is a fine place and worth fighting for. I agree with the second part. So that's just like Batman, right? I'm the hero Gotham needs, or whatever. That's Somerset's moment where he says, I believe the world is worth fighting for. I believe that this job is worth doing, even in light of all the horrible things we just went through. So he arcs. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Almost exactly the same, but if you want to do a bad ending, just flip the negative and positive on those last 2 major beats. Cool. All right, so let's take a little break, and then we will get into stuff that's a little bit more writing-y. So let's take 15.